to that issue in the, I don't know why the screen is black here. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So we then we look into the Sunnah. All right. So we do not use our intellect first. We use our intellect after having exhausted what is found in the Quran and what is found in the Hadith or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and then we try to use our intellect to logically address the problem. Okay. Now we will also talk about the lay infertility. Before we could actually assist them with the assisted reproductive technologies that we have today. So then we go back to the Quran and we see whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us something about infertility. And then after having addressed that Quranic verse, then we have to actually address it from the medical point of view, infertility and medical intervention. But now we have to establish whether infertility is a disease or not a disease. Because only if it's a disease, then we'll be able to treat it. And then we come to art, the assisted reproductive technologies, the infertility, the problem, ethical legal concerns, third-party intervention, surrogacy, human cloning, and then the conclusion. Okay? All right. All right. Humans are expected to populate the world. Even in Christianity is the same thing. You know, we find in Christianity, in Judaism, it's the same. You know, so there's a Quranic ayah here in Surah An-Nisa, in which Allah tells us, "Remember, God, who created you from a single person, created of like nature, His mate, and from them twain scattered like seeds, countless men and women." So Islam, like other religions, encourages their followers to marry, and that's why we find there's a hadith in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, "Marry women who will love you and give birth to many children. For I, Muhammad ﷺ, shall take pride in the great number of my ummah on Yawm al-Qiyamah." Okay. So now we establish, now this is the thing. So it is normal human craving. So sex is a normal human craving. But as Muslims, we cannot fulfill the dictates of our sexual desire unless and until we enter into matrimony. All right. Now, I know there's a whole lot of problem going on about LGBTQ. All right. But as Muslims, we must be very clear that Allah in the verse of the Quran said, "Do you approach men instead of women?" Because it's only through the women that you can actually produce children. You cannot produce children by having sex with a man. All right. So now this is what we have to bear in mind when we're doing that. Okay. All right. So the matrimonial union legitimizes the sexual act, which facilitates the sperm to fertilize the egg and hence procreation of the human race. But approximately 15% of couples in the world suffer from infertility. So you may Google it and see it might be more. And there are a lot of, in the foods that we eat, and they say that today, because of that, we have the men do not produce so many sperm nowadays. And there's you can call it conspiracy theory or whatever. They are, actively trying to, manufacture certain types of food which will lessen, males producing sperm. All right. So it is a problem. You may call it, you say it's a, what you call that? It's a conspiracy theory, but it is true. I got a slide, but I want to show you now, but one day, inshallah, we'll be able to show you to you, but not today. There won't be time for that. All right, now we go to the Quran. When you go to the Quran, when you read the Quran, and please, I urge you all, as Muslim students, read the Quran. There's nothing to be afraid to open the Quran. Unfortunately, many of us do not make an effort to open the Quran, but open the Quran. Read it in Arabic, you get the thawab, but read it in English for you to understand what Allah is saying. There's nothing wrong to read the Quran in English if you do not know Arabic. You read the Arabic to get the thawab, but then you read the English translation for you to understand what Allah is saying. So now if we do not read the Quran, then we would never know that at least two prophets, namely Zakaria, Sayyidina Zakaria and Sayyidina Ibrahim, whose wives could not bear children, eventually did in their old age. All right. Now, if you as doctors know very well, when the woman passed menopause period, the stage, then there's no chance that she's going to bear children. But this, we are told in the Quran, it was past, very old. They even tell Allah that, my wife is old, ajuza. How can it happen? But Allah says, kun fayakun. You just say, or say, be, and it is. Okay. So then let's talk about this. Let's see what the Quran says. It says, this is a mention of the mercy of your Lord to his servant Zakaria. When he called to his Lord, a private call, that is supplication, that dua. He said, my Lord, indeed my bones have weakened and my head has filled with white, and never have I been in my supplication to you, my Lord, unhappy, that is disappointed. And indeed, I fear the successors after me, and my wife has been barren. So give me from yourself an heir who will inherit me and inherit from the family of Jacob, and make him, my Lord, pleasing to you. And this happens in Surah Maryam, Surah 19 of the Quran, verses 2 to 3. So the inference from this is that his wife was barren, unable to bear children, and beyond the age of bearing children. However, he still made the dua to Allah because he knew that nothing is impossible for him, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So nothing is impossible. Okay. I should have brought the other one, but the other prophet. But anyway, I just stick to one, but I should have done that. But anyway, it's about the same thing, let me just go back here. Yeah, about Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, who was, he had two wives, okay? Sarah and Hajra. All right, the first wife was barren. So he married the second one. So it is from the second one that he got Ismail alayhi salam. And then eventually Sarah also gave birth. So he gave birth and then to Isaac. That's why we as Muslims, we actually are descendant of Ismail alayhi salam, and the Jews are descendant of Isaac, and therefore we are cousins. So the Palestinians and the Arabs are actually cousins. But unfortunately, the issue of Palestine hang in the balance until today. So what did the infertile Muslim strategy be when that is before we could intervene, medically or using assisted reproductive technologies. So what they did, they resorted to polygamy. So just like Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, his wife the first wife could not bear him children, so he married the second one, and the second one bore him children, but then eventually even the first one also bore him a child, and the second one also, the first one also bore him a child. Okay, so now you go to polygamy, but now the problem, we understand and you understand, is that if you go for fertility tests, and if you actually are male, there can be so many problems, perhaps we'll deal with that prevent you from being fertile. All right? There are so many problems. So you can't go on marrying women up to 4, thinking that they will give birth. One of them will give birth when there's a problem with you. You are suffering, actually, there's a problem with your fertility. So it's many a time it happened that they marry second and third and fourth, and then still they do not have children. And they cause unnecessary problems, financially themselves, financial problems, and also, between the wives and so on. Now, the other one, I'm speaking about visiting Mazar, but then in Cape Town, you go to the Karamat. You go to the Karamat, and there you pray. You make dua. You don't pray to the saint. That we must get it clear. We're not praying to the saint, but we go there and we say, oh Allah, through the pious man who's buried here, the good that he has done in this world, please, may you bless me with children. So we do not make dua. Unfortunately, there's so much problem in South Africa. They say you're going to make dua to the dead and so on. But this is not done. The karamat, when people go there, is not to actually address, but it's just to use like a intercession of these people. You say, oh Allah, this is a very holy man who was here, someone who worshipped you and all. Through his blessing, to his intercession, may my wife be able to bear me a child. All right, they go and do that. Then the third way they did was to approach one of these amil. We call them amil here. I don't know in Cape Town what you call them. Sheikh perhaps. They give you taweez. They give you taweez, and some of them, they tell them that you must wrap the taweez around the waist. So it must be just by the umbilical cord or over the umbilical cord. You must tie the taweez. And all this, it happened, by resorting to visiting of mazars or karamat, and also by the taweez, we find that women have been able, or infertile couple have been able to have children. There's no denying the fact about that. So then the fourth one, since if legal adoption is not permissible in Islam, infertile Muslims foster parented their siblings' children. All right. So now this was another way they did. So if there was a brother or sister who had a lot of children, and one brother had no children, then they would give one child to that brother or to that sister, and the sister will bring up the child. So they foster parent the child. Okay. So, but you cannot give your name. So in Islam, you are not allowed to legally adopt the child. But everyone knew, my wife is also, was actually foster parented by the aunt, the father's sister, and she knew exactly who her real mother was. It was never hidden from her. All right. And we used to go and visit. They passed away, both of them now. But then we used to go and visit them and eat by them and take our children to them and so on. So there was no problem whatsoever, Then what happened is that in certain cases, it didn't happen in my mother-in-law, the adopted mother-in-law. It didn't happen in the sense that not adopted, but the one who foster parented my wife. It didn't happen. She didn't give birth. But many a time it happens that when you bring up, or you actually bring up a child, your brother's child, whatever, eventually that same woman who was infertile actually gives birth. And it has happened. You can ask the people in your family and they'll tell you, they'll attest to the fact that it did happen. Okay. Now, this is a very important ayah of the Quran, very, very important. And I want you to really concentrate on it. Concentrate in such a way that we'll go slowly together, all right? And we'll read it together. To Allah belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth. So now Allah is already, making us, accept the fact that He is the one, the Almighty. He has control of everything that is in the heavens and the earth. So He creates what He wills. He bestows female offspring upon whom He wills, and bestows male offspring upon whom He wills. Or He bestows both males and females, and He renders barren whom He wills. Verily, He is the all-knower and is able to do all things. So I hope you have digested, and I underline there, He renders barren whom He wills, because this is important for us to note, all right? To note when we discuss whether infertility is a disease or not a disease, okay? Or is it the will of Allah, all right? Now, in my family, my father and mother gave birth, my mother gave birth to 10 children, 6 males and 4 females. So I have 4 sisters, and Alhamdulillah, we are all alive until today, all right? By Allah's grace, all of us are alive. And only the youngest one is turned 59. He hasn't turned 60, but all of us are over 60 years old. Now, the first one is my sister who lives in Zimbabwe. He has 5 sons. And here Allah says, He bestows male offspring upon whom He wills. 5 sons, he never had daughters. The second sister, who is older than me or elder than me, Allah blessed her with 3 sons. And me, Allah blessed me with 4 daughters and no sons. The one after me, Allah blessed him with 2 daughters and a son. And the one after my brother that comes after me is a sister, and she lives with me in Durban, in South Africa, is married in Durban, and Allah blessed her with 3 daughters and one boy and 1 son. Okay, but then one of the girls who was very intelligent, she was doing astrophysics, but she passed away. That was very sad, because when she was actually at the university and pursuing masters in astrophysics, then Allah took her away. She was asthmatic, and she had an attack, and nothing could be done to save her. So after the sister comes a brother, and he's a doctor in Joburg, right? He's a doctor who is actually in charge of, most of his patients are AIDS patients. So Allah blessed him with 2 sons, but one was miscarried. So only 1 son is alive until today. And then the one after him, Allah blessed him, he's a brother, with a boy and a girl. And the one after him, Allah blessed him with 2 boys. And the 2 younger ones, first comes a sister, and Allah made her barren. And the youngest brother, whom I told you, is not yet 60, he's also, is infertile. So no children. So all of us had, I don't think in any family, I don't think any one of you in your own family, you have what I have. And this, when I read this Quranic verse, it resonates with me, because I can actually, vouch to what Allah is saying, that it is a reality. And there, even the last part, He renders barren whom He wills, and they could never have children. The 2 last one, the youngest brother and the youngest sister. All right, infertility and medical intervention. So the male infertility, there are many things. We can't be able to address all the problems that has to do with the sperm. Okay, azoospermia, men with no sperm in their semen. All right, sometimes you are born like that. There's no sperm whatsoever. And then you have reverse ejaculation. So when you have sex, it's called, you have reverse ejaculation. So again, you cannot impregnate your wife. And then female infertility, you have blockage of the fallopian tube, anovulation, ovulation induction, and then fertility, female infertility, uncorrectable, born without uterus. You cannot do anything because if that woman is born without a uterus, what do? You know? So, and then this is where you go back to the verse of the Quran, because Allah made her born like that. Then you say that Allah made me infertile. The woman must accept that she will be infertile. But all the rest, we can perhaps do something and try medically intervene to try and solve the problem of infertility. Now, when you talk about the blockage of the fallopian tube, I got a first cousin. I'm from Seychelles, actually, if you don't know. I'm from Seychelles, and I'm also the honorary consul of Seychelles in Durban, South Africa. You know, it's like an ambassador, but I'm in South Africa, I'm representing my country officially. So now I have a cousin in Seychelles, and I performed her nikah. And then many years after, she realized that she could not bear children. So they came to Cape Town. And when they did, because in Seychelles is a small country, we don't have, sophistication as far as medicine is concerned and so on. So it came to, and they found that the fallopian tube was blocked, and they unblocked it, and she gave birth to a son. But they had only one child until now, okay? But this happened, okay? So sorry, I'm just relating because it's life. We're talking about life. And whatever happened in my family, I want to share with you. So it drives the point home, okay? Now we come to the seeking treatment in light of hadith. So I'm just trying to address the issue whether infertility is a disease or not a disease. So the Bedouin Arabs came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "O Messenger of Allah, should we treat ourselves?" He replied, "Yes, O servants of Allah. You must treat yourself, for verily Allah has not created a disease without providing a cure for it, except for one disease." They asked him, "Which one?" He replied, "Old age." So everything else, will be able to have a cure one day. All that problem that we have, even Alzheimer's disease, and, we'll be able, my wife is suffering from Alzheimer's. She now doesn't talk, she cannot walk, but I'm there for her, and one day, even that disease will be able to be cured, but we might never be able to realize that in my lifetime, in our lifetime. We just accept that it is from Allah and we cannot do anything about it. Now, as far as I said, the old age. Now, I don't know whether you remember Christian Maynard. They were trying to do some concoction, something to apply on the face, actually to take out all the wrinkles and all that. So that's about how much they can do. But as far as everything that is deteriorating while you are actually becoming old, the cells that die, you cannot regenerate those cells, So because he says that you will eventually die, old age, you will not be able to cure it. He said old age, you won't be able to cure it. Anyway, if you want to ask question about it, you can do so, okay? Now we come to the assisted reproductive technologies for us to be able to rectify infertility. So assisted reproductive technologies are specialized medical procedures for the treatment of infertility. Can Muslims therefore resort to art as a form of treatment for their infertility? So this is a question that we ask, and this is the dilemma we have. There are many, many people, many Muslims that they do not want. Even if I tell them, I say, come on, you see what happened if you are married and after 1 year, you could not produce a child, then it means there is a cause for concern. Then you must seek medical treatment. You know, there's a cause for concern. And I know when you get married also, remember that after 1 year, if nothing happens, then you must think about getting a medical intervention. Of course, it depends on your iman, whether you believe, oh, Allah wants me to stay like that and so on. Okay, so now we have to address that question. So now, attempts to manipulate pregnancy inevitability gives rise to a host of ethical concerns. Conception becomes a medical event rather than an act of love. All right, so the sexual act do not actually ends up with producing a child, but then you have to actually take out the sperm and take out the egg and then fertilize them, you know, manually in a laboratory. All right, so this is why. So they say the conception is a medical event rather than an act of love. So the ethical legal concerns in vitro fertilization. All right, before we go there, we go there. All right, so now we have to address whether infertility is actually a disease or not a disease. You see, it's important for us to do that. We have to address it. We have, as Muslim, we have to address it. So how do you address this? We say, let us go to the doctor. I told you last week that the doctor, the medical people, they are known as Ahlul Khibra, means the expert in the field of medicine. So a gynecologist, you go to a gynecologist and then and see what he says about our problem. So now if he tells you and he establishes, it might be the blocked fallopian tube, it might be a question of not being able to produce sperm, or the sperm count is very low, you know, all that. So what do? You can still, if the sperm count is low, you can still actually, you know, I forgot the term that they use medically, when you can, you know, extract the sperm and then fertilize the ovum or your wife with it. Okay, so I believe that infertility is a disease. But once we establish, for example, if we go to the gynecologist and they say, but you see, my the problem I have with you, my whatever they say, my patient, you know, female patient, you are born without a uterus. So there's no way whatsoever you'll be able to bear a child. Never. And some women, they do not menstruate. And that also may be a problem, okay, for you to bear a child, okay? So now, in that event, then we resign to what Allah tells us at the end of the ayah that we read before, that Allah decreed that some people should remain barren, okay? So now we go to the ethical legal concern, in vitro fertilization. That's the obvious way of rectifying infertility. During fertility treatment, only a single fertilized embryo selected for implantation. You can have many embryos fertilized, okay? But only one will be taken out. I don't know whether you heard there was a problem in America when the gynecologist had been scrapped off the medical as a practicing medicine, when he put, I think, 10 babies, you know, into 10 fertilized embryos into the woman, you know, causing, you know, a problem. But although she gave birth to all of them, you know, but anyway, there was a problem. They say she shouldn't have done that, okay? So only a single. So fate of the other embryos, what happens to the other embryos? They might do 1 or 2, all right? They might put 1 or 2, you know, normally they might put, so if one spontaneously is miscarried, then the other one may actually be implanted and then may develop into a baby eventually. So what happened to the fate of the other embryos? They are discarded. tantamount to disturbing human life because you have already fertilized them. But now they say, now we have to pause there whether it's human life or not human life. It is going to be human life because once you fertilize, if you do not tamper with it and it is implanted in the woman, eventually she will give birth to the child. These are embryos that are there. So what do we do? Some of them, they kept them frozen, all right? You freeze the embryos. So in case the whatever you have implanted does not eventually end up with a baby being born, then you have extra embryos for you to be able to repeat the procedure. And then there's another problem, and that we find in the Western world, where they say they actually do that. They take the embryo, the fertilized embryo, which, I mean, the woman does that with the husband's sperm, and then they freeze it, and they say eventually when the person dies, then actually I can still have his child. All right. So now this is questionable. So it's posthumous implantation. So when the person dies, then you implant it, this posthumous implantation. Okay. And then the other thing they do, all these are questionable. Okay. Donation to infertile couples may result in adopted child marrying sibling. When I was studying when doing my doctorate in America, and we read in the paper that the father married his own daughter because he had been supplying his sperms everywhere and did not know who actually received the sperm, the sperm, whose embryo was used or whose egg was used to fertilize, I mean, with his sperm. He didn't know. Eventually, when they traced, they found out that this was actually his own daughter. All right. So these are the ethical concerns. So now, I don't know whether I address it later on. No, let me address it now. So we go back. During the fertility treatment, only a single fertilized embryo selected, fate of the other embryos discarded, tantamount to destroy human life. Okay. Now, what they say, the ulama, when they say, okay, if you're going to keep one or two embryo as spare, in case it doesn't happen that your wife carries the baby to term, the first one that they implanted in her, then you have option for the other. But if it's done, then what do you do with the other two? Now you either can keep it later on, after the baby is born, you can have it implanted, you can have the second child, the third child, if they cannot naturally produce a child. So there's no problem with that. It's only when the question of discarding them, when you flush them, you know, we discarded, so the fate of the other embryos, this is the problem. All right, it's like destroying human life. Okay. Now you have to read in detail in my book, I addressed that, but now I can't actually go into detail about that. So there are certain ulama or fuqaha that believe that the soul has not been breathed into that embryo. So you can discard it, okay, because of the greater evil that this embryo may be either given, maybe implanted in women, in other women. You know, you don't know what is happening in the laboratory. They might do that. Or the wife eventually may say, even if a Muslim, I want to have it implanted in my uterus after my husband died. Muslim people can do that. You know, they are very funny today. They can do anything. You know, we find out today, you know, we in this time that we are living in, I don't know whether you have it, I'm sure you have it in Cape Town, where Muslim girls are marrying non-Muslim males. And I have a friend who asked me to perform the nikah of her daughter. And when I asked, but who is the groom? He said, no, he remains a Catholic. So I said that I cannot, because the law of Allah is that you cannot. So I cannot perform the nikah. But they had the nikah performed and they got married. You know, but I said, no, I can't do it because you're defying the commandment of Allah. A Muslim woman cannot marry a non-Muslim male. It's Quranic law. Unfortunately, today, we have become complacent of the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we do whatever we want. And the poor parent, they just have to toe the line. There's nothing they can do, you know. And it's sad, you know, very sad. Okay. Now we talk about third-party intervention. So if we actually cannot bear a child, if there's a problem with our sperm, we have no sperm whatsoever, can we actually artificial insemination, have a wife artificially inseminated by a donor sperm, someone who's by someone else's sperm, or egg donation? If our wife is born, if there's a problem, she cannot have, she has never produced eggs, was never menstruated, whether we can, but has a uterus, whether we can actually have the egg, so he doesn't have an egg, so we can have an egg from someone else, a donor egg, and then fertilize with a husband's sperm, and then implant it into our wife uterus, and then she'll give birth to that baby. And that is a problem. So it's a third-party intervention. So we are not allowed to do that. Because child conceived through AID or egg donation is the fruit of the active element of a third party who has no moral and juridical bond of conjugal procreation with their husband or wife of another person. So the womb of a woman, all right, is supposed to be private. So nothing can go into it except if you are actually married to her, married legally to her, then the nikah is performed only. So no sperm belonging to another man can be used to fertilize the egg, and no, egg from another woman can be used. No egg from another woman can be brought and then in the laboratory with the sperm of the husband and then placed into that woman, into the woman. It will not be allowed because the lineage of the child will be compromised. So it's not your child actually. It is not your child. Whatever we want to say, but it is not our child because the sperm is not the husband's sperm. The egg is not the wife's egg. Now we come to the question of surrogacy. Now, when I was in the States, I completed my doctorate from 1983. I completed my master's. So then I was busy with my doctorate. I completed in 1986, 2 years only. I wrote on all these issues at that time. And I was one who, by Allah's grace, laid the foundation in America. They haven't been writing on this issue. And I was the one who actually was one of the first people that actually gave a doctorate on these issues in America. All right, so surrogacy, multiplicity of mothers. Mrs. A is infertile. Mrs. B agrees to provide ova to be fertilized in vitro with semen from Mr. A. Embryos are transferred to Mrs. C, who agrees to carry the baby to term and hand it over to Mrs. A and her husband after birth. So when I was there at the university, then there were people studying with us, and they told us that they are going to actually take a break. They will take a break because they are going to be surrogate mother. And at that time, in 1980s, they were paying $10,000 US for you to become a surrogate mother. So these students who were struggling with paying fees and so on, they thought, let me do that. And after 1 year or so, then I can come back and study. All right. Okay, so that was, by the way, just to let you know. Then commercial surrogacy could lead to enticing married women. Now we're talking about commercial surrogacy. There are women, Muslim women, who say that I want to get married, but I don't want to have children. So now this would be commercial surrogacy. So they won't have, so they'll tell the husband, okay, now you can have my egg fertilized by your sperm, but then eventually we have to put in someone else because I don't want to give birth. I don't want to have anything to do with children, all right? Then you can get someone to nurse the child and so on, okay? So and then they won't even give birth. So they relieve themselves of the agony of going through the pangs of pregnancy and childbirth. So it undermines the institution of family and family life by doing that. So this is what surrogacy is, and this is not allowed. Okay. Okay, let's look at the time. Oh, we said 1:45. Let me finish that, then I quickly, sorry I took your time. Human cloning. Children born in wedlock carry the genetic components of both their parents, and this genetic combination gives them their identity. A human clone involves a female having her own clone without the genetic complement of her spouse, would end up having no father. Consequently, too, a human clone that involves a male having his own clone without the genetic complement of her spouse would end up having no mother. This form of asexual reproduction will undoubtedly contradict the divine pattern in the creation of humans, as is evident from the Quranic verse, "O mankind, we have created you from male and female." All right. So you know more about it. You can read about it. We don't have time to go on. So genetic replication through human cloning will negatively impact upon spousal and child-parent relationship and bring an end to the sanctity of the institution of the family. Human cloning will rob the child of her roots, ancestry, and undermine the laws of inheritance, which are based on consanguinity. The conclusion, while acknowledging the fact that Allah in reality blesses some couples with children and some to remain infertile, resolving infertility through ART would not necessarily constitute interference with the divine will. Infertility should be regarded as a disease that could be cured, so that the infertile couple may fulfill the religious imperative to populate the world. Art has opened the doors to a host of possibilities in order to rectify infertility. However, Muslims ought to bear in mind that what may be possible may not necessarily be morally and religiously justified. Any assisted reproductive manipulation which involves a third party, both in form of sperm or egg donor or surrogacy, is strictly forbidden. Likewise, human cloning as a means of rectifying infertility is also strongly censured. So it may never ever happen that human cloning will become, in time to come, it will become a reality. You know what happened to Dolly the sheep? You know, it aged very quickly, and then they had to mercy killing. They had to kill her. All right. They had to put her to sleep. I think that is all I got. Yeah, number 18. So that's all I have. Okay, so you want to ask questions? Feel free to ask questions. About 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly 10 minutes. Or something to contribute. I'm open if you want to contribute anything. If I left out something you want to add, if you want to educate me medically, which I may have not actually stated that correctly, you may correct me. Fadl. Yes, someone, Abdullah Musa, you got your hand.
I just want to ask, just to clarify, if a man and a woman.
If what? I cannot hear. Put your unmute yourself, Brother Hood. Can you unmute him? Allow him to unmute. Yeah.
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
And can Professor go back to the 17th slide? I'd like to take note of it.
Sorry?
Can Professor go back to the 17th slide?
17 one. Okay.
Yes.
I'll go back. Yeah.
And shukran.
Afwan. You want to ask a question? No. No. Okay, we have another one. Ahmad Gur. Unmute Ahmad Gur, please, Brother Hood. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. Yeah, no, so I attended this, I joined a bit late, so I may have missed an important aspect of the talk. I just had a question regarding something I heard towards the end.
Right. Problem. Yeah, anything.
If we're kind of if there are certain medical procedures that will infect inheritance laws, but aren't necessarily intrinsically problematic, should we then like sort of prohibit the medical procedure or this biological advancement, or should we then just rather adapt inheritance laws for this new technology?
Yeah, you see, now I would like you to be more specific and tell me what medically, what is that which is flawed? What is it?
So there was something mentioned about perhaps a surrogate child, right? So
Yeah,
now there might be questions about, okay, who's the father? Maybe the questions might be who's responsible for looking after this child.
right.
Wouldn't those be questions that one could deal with, trying to use sort of an ethical family structure induced from like Quranic maqasid, rather than just banning surrogate children altogether?
No, we have to ban it altogether. There's no way that we can, as Muslims, accept surrogacy to resolve infertility. All right. So you must have read, in America, even when I was there, the one who became the surrogate mother did not want to give back the child. He said, no, but 9 months you have been with me and I can't already sign the contract. They wanted to break the contract. There's a whole lot of problems that happen. And then because you're actually you're tempering with the question of the sanctity or the privateness of the woman part, which as in, this is where the problem is. You cannot have a sperm fertilize the egg of another woman, or your sperm fertilize the egg of your wife and you take that embryo and then transfer it to another woman to bear the child. Okay, so the Quran says al-waladu lil-firash, that the child belongs to the bed, means the one who actually gives birth to the child is actually the mother. So no matter what you do, you're causing problem now. You're going to cause problem because now there's no way that you're going to have the child if you're going to do that. And you are not supposed to do it. All right? You are not supposed to do that. Okay, the question that you may ask, my brother Ahmad Gur, your question, I would have liked it if it was actually that, listen, I married a woman. There's nothing wrong with me, but there's a problem with the woman. She is born without a uterus. And I don't want to give her talaq. I love her. I want to keep her. And I'm going to marry a second wife. All right? And that we find that the wife is fertile and so on. So now you get a child. But then, okay, no, let me tell you the other way, the other story. The other story is that she never menstruated. No, not have your issue, never. So now you are within the confines of marriage. All right. So now can you actually have that second wife's egg impregnated or fertilized with the sperm of the husband and transfer it to the other woman, because then she will be the mother of the child. All right. So now this question, when I was doing my PhD, I asked the question, but until today, there's no clarity on that, whether that will be allowed or not allowed. So again, Brother Ahmed Gur, we have a problem. I know this is, you see, we have to understand that Allah gave us a brain. Allah gave us a brain. We can do anything we want, but then we cannot do it if it goes against the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you're going to bring surrogacy as a way of rectifying infertility, then it will not be accepted. We'll be defying the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So I hope I answered your question. Anyone else? In the chat, I don't know whether there is any question there, or is it just
Yes, there is, I think, 2 questions.
just clarify, if a man and a woman are married, can they do in vitro fertilization provided that this egg from the wife and the sperm run? Definitely. There's no problem. That's why I say it will be known, we recognize infertility as a disease. You know, for example, the husband doesn't, you know, we talk about the reverse ejaculation. We spoke about, you know, the low sperm count. So in no way will he be able to actually fertilize your egg. So in that case, we can resort to it, but it must be only the sperm of your husband and the egg of the wife that we are allowed to do that, and then the child, there's no problem with it. Okay. Any other question? We have about 2 minutes left.
And Professor,
Yes.
what does aid mean?
Sorry?
What does aid, AID, mean?
AID is artificial insemination by donor. Artificial insemination by donor. Whether it's a sperm or an egg. AID. Anyway, I must really thank you all, you know, although you are only about 11, we have about 22 last week, but still, I don't mind. Okay, in that case, could a fertilized egg from a couple be carried by someone else, or is that completely disallowed? It's completely disallowed. You cannot. If it is the husband's sperm fertilize the wife's ova, okay, in no way can someone else give birth or transplant it in someone else's uterus or womb to have that woman bear the child, you know, or bring the child to, I mean, the term, you know, it's not allowed. It's completely disallowed. Where can I get details and link for the following sessions? I'm not at UCT, I'm at, okay, listen, if you want all my slides, it's there's no copyright on them. Rushana, if you allow me to send you the email, if you have no problem with that, I'll send the file, I mean the PowerPoint, okay? And then you can just, you know, give it to everyone. It's okay. I don't mind.
And also just to add on to that, we will be posting the recording soon. We're adding them to Google Drive and we'll post them online.
The recording also. Okay, then you can give them. All right. Shukran, Salma.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, Professor. And just a reminder to everybody that next week, inshallah, will be around the same time. And a link will be sent. I think next week we'll send another